Hi there. I just thought I'd take the opportunity, look at a couple of races and let you see why you may not necessarily want to use the Dutch laying tool and instead lay manually when you're opposing some of the runners. We're going to concentrate on the Napchecker stuff again. So this race at Ayr, the 115, is shortly upon us, and the selections are here. So we'll just select them in the Dutch laying tool. Elixir, return ticket, and hazard key. Okay, we just get rid of those. So you can see here, these are the stakes that would be placed on each of those runners, the lay stakes, for a liability of £100 if either of those horses went on to win the race. Now, of course, we're ultimately going to be trading out. And the potential issue with that is if the green up process doesn't work on every single runner, or even if one of these initial lays isn't actually taken for whatever reason, you can actually end up with higher liabilities than the desired £100. For example, you see the odds here are flickering around 3.5, give or take, for a stake of £75. Now, if Frere Dams was to go on to win, you might think, I'm going to lose £100. But if for whatever reason these stakes or these greenouts aren't taken, the actual liability on that runner when you place the bet isn't £100, it's 100 plus all of these. Okay, so we're getting on for £200 there is the actual liability on this runner. And the same goes for everything else. It's not £100 here, it's those two plus that. So you can end up with some high figures. Alternatively, you can use the manual method. So if I just switch swap off just now so I can lay on this side and make sure we get taken. If you have a lay stake set to a liability, and I just click on here, that one, it was return ticket, and that one. Okay, there's our max liability is £60, and it's not going to go above that, irrespective of how the green up position. Now, I've got this assigned to a target of maximum profit. So our maximum profit is £75 in this particular case. So we'll be looking at greening up for about £15 once this race gets underway. So you may find that this is a better mechanism, but obviously these liabilities that we have here will vary depending on whatever odds that you have, as well as the number of runners that you're opposing. So the more runners that you have, that you're opposing, the higher the ultimate profit if you left it as essentially a Dutch lay. It's just that the liabilities will vary depending on that. But you may find that easier to control or easier in situations where the green up process isn't fully matched across all your selected runners, or for whatever reason, for example, a horse might be removed from the market after you've placed your bet. So although there's obviously adjustments for reduction factors and so on, you may end up with some funny numbers there. But by doing it this way, by doing it manually, the overall lay or the maximum lay can only ever be 100, because the lay for each of these is 100. But in terms of the actual process of trading out, it's essentially the same. You just use whatever green up process you want, based on whatever figures you are, and let the trade proceed. The only thing I would say is that you might, although I'm using £100 lay stake as a liability, because of the way this does, you might want to increase that by just upping that a little bit. But be aware, if you ever get involved in a short price favourite, that figure, that liability on that runner is going to be significantly higher. So just be aware of that. So we'll let this race run through, and then I'll just go on to the next race and do the same to let you see the difference. Personally, I'm in two minds whether to use this method or use the Dutch lay method. As I say, you just have to be aware of the types of races you're getting involved in. And generally speaking, if one of your selections, and if you're using the Napchecker picks as your guide, you will generally find that the favourite is usually one of your picks. So you may find that you potentially have high odds there. I certainly wouldn't get involved. From past experience, I wouldn't look at getting involved on a runner that's really short in odds, because you could end up with significantly high liabilities if the other runners aren't matched out. Not least of which, you need to have that money available in your Betfair account for the process to be actually successful, because not every runner involved in the green up process will necessarily be matched exactly at the same time. So Betfair will be monitoring your account, and if when that happens you suddenly find that you don't have enough money, the green up process will fail, or you may get some funny results. But in terms of the actual trade itself, it's just the same. The numbers are just slightly different, that's all. So doing it manually is perhaps a way of trying to mitigate any funnies with the liabilities if one of the runners isn't greened up properly, or is withdrawn, or the initial bet isn't taken in the first place. So whilst that's chugging away, we'll have a quick look at the Thusk race coming up. So there's a short price favourite there. So that's a relatively short price favourite, I should say. So it'll be interesting to see the figures for that one. And that's our green up just happened. Let me just move that out of the way again. Right, so there you see the green up process hasn't fully happened on Elixir. So it needs to drift significantly. So that's where you would end up with potential large liability all of a sudden if you use the other method. It seems to be drifting nicely, and so we've actually managed to trade out successfully in that case. Okay, let's move on to the next race. And again, if we were to look at the Dutch laying, I pull up Napchecker again. It was Old Smoke, Paternoster, and you better be quick. Okay, so you'll see here there's a stake of £180, give or take, at evens on Old Smoke. So since it's evens, that'll be the liability on that runner. So you get this disparity that you may have to consider. So as I say, if you're using the Dutch lay, be very careful of getting involved in a very short priced runner. Okay, I'll wait till near the off until I get involved. Okay, they're just loading in the 125 at Thusk. So we'll just choose our three options. That was that one, Paternoster, and you better be quick. Now you'll see here, because that's a short price odds on favourite, we've actually only got a liability on the favourite now, if we were to leave the thing to run, as it were. Whereas if I quickly switch to Dutch laying, okay, we would have liabilities on them all, but you can see how much bigger the stake is, 219 on Old Smoke, where it was 120 using this method. Obviously, if we were to increase that, it would be different. But it's something you might want to consider. I think it potentially helps you keep control of the potential liabilities. So we've got a maximum of 141, and I've assigned the maximum profit. So 140 we'll be looking at here. So we should be greening up for about £35, assuming all goes well. So I'll skip on when this race is underway. Okay, we're off and running. It's a 1 mile race this, so it should take just a couple of minutes. And hopefully we'll get a green up here. as I said earlier, I'm not sure whether I wish to do it manually or use the Dutch laying. The more I look at it, the more I'm inclined to go manual if one of my picks is of low odds, let's say below 2.5, but use the Dutch laying mechanism if all my runners are above that particular price. So again, you'll see that we're going okay at the moment, but keep in mind that we've got a fairly high potential profit here. So we'll be looking at 35 for greening up purposes. So we've got another wee bit to go yet. Oh, got very close there. That's it. Thank you very much. That worked nicely, didn't it? So we're greening up for £57. Lovely. Okay, as I say, try both methods if you wish, and just keep in mind the potential issues with using the Dutch laying. There's nothing wrong with the actual Dutch laying process itself. You just need to be aware of the potential issues with regard to your liabilities. By using the manual method, you can perhaps get a better grasp of what's happening. Very much personal preference. So try it and see for yourself. Cheers.